Hi there, it's Dr. JOYLYN Sparkles and welcome to your Power Hour. This is your time to put what's on your mind on my mind, and we'll put our heads and hearts together and come up with a way to go from stuck to happy as fuck in a short amount of time as possible. Why? Because like Ricky Bobby, I like to go fast, okay? It's really just that simple. It's all about me. No, just kidding. And you, because I know you guys who are like me and just want to go fast. You've had enough. What is it going to take to actually work and experience a different and new reality? So that's what we're talking about today, is how to get out of a downward spiral, because we've all been there. And some of us keep wondering how we keep ending up there. Is this just something that we thoroughly enjoy? Is it an amusement park ride? Is it something I can't escape? Is this going to be my life indefinitely until the end of time? And we have those questions and we watch ourselves sometimes fall into it, go into it, and it doesn't seem like anything that we can control about whether it's happening or not. And so end up feeling powerless and maybe a little bit miserable and just pissed. Or maybe that's just me. Because why? Why am I even talking about this? Because I just did it again. And I've been doing this work for a long time, okay? I've been doing it for a long time, and just to watch the downward spiral happen was kind of humbling. And here's the bottom line: annoying. It's actually boring at this point. It's not so entertaining anymore. And that's one of the things that I'm going to get to, is to really just suck out, just to vacuum out the whole nobility of suffering. Because when it comes to personal growth and developing yourself and evolution and ascension, the struggle is only necessary until it isn't. Okay? But some of us are just so familiar and acquainted with a struggle, and if you're a front runner, you're actually in the statistical minority, so the majority of the planet is still requiring struggle in order to make choices and do something different, to where it seems weird for you to operate otherwise. But really, it's coming down to a matter of choice. And that's what I'd like to give us all, is actually just, we can do something different because we just want something different. And there doesn't have to be a big struggle or, crisis coming on about it. So anyway, for those of you on my mailing list, while you were away, you got emailed 2 different Power Hour replays, and I actually watched the what happens when nothing works, because nothing was working. And holy shit, I'm brilliant, okay? Wow, I blew myself away and wondering, where have you been my whole life? Right here, obviously, but how many of us do that, I've been here the whole time. Even some of my coaches are like, well, what would you tell a client? And I can come up with something great. But when it comes to me, it doesn't count, okay? But this happens when I read my book too. When I listen to myself, the answers are there. And I imagine it's the same for you too. So let us talk about how to get out of a downward spiral so you can get to that point where you can actually hear what your heart is telling you and how to actually move forward into your life and your future, all right? So as typical, we're going to sort of define terms or get familiar with what the hell we're talking about, which is the downward spiral, okay? You can call it a tailspin, a shit pit. Some people refer to themselves as a dumpster fire or a hot mess. Maybe you think you're in the dark night of the soul, which we've all done that, and thinking it would be a solitary experience that would change our lives forever, and it did, but then we do it again and again and wonder why things feel so dark. So it's really just the low and dark times of life, and that time where you feel like you're grasping at everything and being pulled or carried away with your thoughts and your feelings, and kind of at the effect of them, and just trying to manage or cope and get through it, not knowing that there's actually a point of power in there that you can actually stand in. And so when we're in this negative vortex, this crappity crap, it's swirling thoughts. That's why a lot like the spiral kind of is a good metaphor. It's swirling thoughts. They keep looping back onto each other, and they're coming. It's like Dorothy in the tornado. Oh, ATM, like you're just all over the place, and everything is like a fragment of a thought, because you see it and then it's gone, but then it comes back, and it's a lot of the same old shit. And then there'll be heavy emotions, like it just kind of a stagnant, almost like an icky feeling, like sad, frustrated, but really a lot of times when I'm in a downward spiral, it's just like this overwhelming sense of stuckness. And sometimes what I noticed with my last one, everything's a little bit extra, I might be a little tired, now I'm extra tired. I might be a little bit off or cranky, but then I'm extra crabby, and people get extra annoying. Like everything's just a little bit extra because it's kind of all amplified, for whatever reason. Almost like, because you're right in it, whatever. All right, and then sometimes physically, it doesn't always coincide, but maybe you just don't feel good. You're just not energetic as you would like to, as you have been. Something's kind of thrown you off. And so these things are the downward spiral, but here are the 2 key indicators that you're in it. This is how you're going to notice you're in it quickest, fastest. All right, just get curious about these 2 things. You don't like yourself. Boom. You're in some sort of shit, okay? Because when you're truly being you, you've got no competition. There's nothing to compare yourself to. You're connected to source. You just like yourself, and you're excited about being alive. So if you don't like yourself, you are in some level of this downward spiral. If you're not lit up by your life, especially if you're an empath, you're probably caught up in someone else's, and that's going to also be one of those things that puts you off balance. We'll get to that in just a second. So, do you like yourself? Are you excited about getting up in the morning? Okay, and it's not to say that every day you bounce out of bed and good morning flowers and trees like Belle on Beauty and the Beast. But there is some level of enthusiasm about what can I create? What am I going to do with this day? Wow, here I am. What am I doing? Okay? When I'm in the downward spiral, it's what the fuck am I doing here? Okay? And there will be some times where we're at a up-leveling point or a crossroads, and those bigger questions come up. But when it's a heavy thing that's keeping us in bed and we're not actually interested in investigating the answer, it's probably we're caught up in this old little swirling toilet bowl that we've got going on. Now, here is something that you may relate to. Not liking yourself and not being lit up by life might actually be what you know as normal. It might be how you're still operating from now, so that this downward spiral might be your MO. And so what's great about what I'm going to tell you is you can come out of this regardless of how long or how deep you're in it. Okay? So good news, it doesn't even matter if you've been in it forever, and this might be the first time that you ever thought I could get out of it, and stay out of it. Yes. Yes, it's possible. Something else is possible. This does not have to be your lived experience until the day you die. Okay? You don't have to just manage and cope. None of us came here to just pay bills and die. Okay? That is boring and way too mediocre for any of you. What do I want to call you? You're overthinkers, but overachievers, like infinite beings, like just fucking magical ass people. You badasses, okay? You came here for greatness. You want to know your greatness, but it is a little bit scary. So sometimes we can dive into a downward spiral so that we don't have to face that other shit, okay? So that's what it is. That's what we're dealing with. You know it. I know it. We've experienced it. Perhaps at this point you're actually becoming aware it's not fun anymore. There is a certain level of entertainment value that might come in getting caught up in drama, and we're going to have to admit that to ourselves. There might be a certain level of addiction that we've chemically conditioned to having this level of function. There might be some fears because everybody that we talk to and our life is kind of operating on this level. So there are some what we call secondary payoffs to doing this, and we have to start getting real about those. Because if we're not willing to say that, then we just start getting resistant, reacting, and saying, I got to stop this. And that's about a surefire method to keep it in place. And I'm going to get to there. Okay, so let me get back to my outline. Okay. Causes and contributing factors. Why? Because I'm an academic and I might write this in a blog. Okay, so I'm going to organize it so that you can actually get this. What are some causes and contributing factors? One is you're a human being with a magical meat suit, but you're living in a physical reality, so there might be some physical factors that are factoring in and maybe guiding you into this swirly, twirly, unfun. And it knock you off balance, okay? For a lot of us, a lack of sleep. You do that too many days in a row, you just don't feel like yourself. Okay, same with diet. Like when you're hangry, and some of that is a habit, but like the Snickers commercial where they're like, "Coach, you're just not yourself." Like when you haven't slept well and you've been eating crap and not actually like doing physical self-care, and that might be not enough movement, it might be too much, like overexertion, it might just be a lack of connection with nature, because this magical meat suit is meant to plug into nature. So if you don't ever get any sunlight and fresh air, you're going to start going down. So sometimes there's some actual physical factors that are kind of weighing you down and making you more susceptible to being pulled into the downward spiral. Another one that I just noticed was coming back from vacation. Like there was the fatigue of traveling and having to sleep in an airport. The most phenomenal sleep. It was not. But also just the high and then going back to like the normal, can be sort of a physical. It was a colder temperature than where I was. I was just in tropical. That's why I'm so tan. And then coming back to chillier springtime temperatures, those sort of things can knock us off balance, physically make us more susceptible. All right. Another one, this is huge and probably the biggest, or perhaps the biggest, is self-abandonment. When we give up the realness of our own reality for someone else's, making theirs more real and true, making it more valid because it appears or looks or seems or makes more sense. And so we give up our hopes, our dreams, our aspirations, our audacity, our willingness to be different. We give that up for somebody else's because on the outside, what we've perceived is that they've got shit together, and we know our internal state is maybe not quite that, or maybe they've got some part of their life figured out that we struggle with, and so we abandon ourselves. We just say, wow, they've got that shit figured out. I should be more like them. Also, when you're a badass and you're functioning from universal contribution, ask and receive, letting magic be part of your game plan, those kind of things, you're in the statistical minority. It is the change that is coming onto the planet, but if that's something that you're curious about creating in your life, you're actually ahead of the curve. So that when you go in and plop yourself into pools of big people, everybody else is functioning from more of the normal of the 9 to 5, get a paycheck, plan for your future, put money away for your kids' college education. And there is nothing wrong with that. There is no judgment here, but knowing that that isn't for everyone. And actually some people that are doing it are only doing it because maybe they are curious about something else but haven't maybe made as many steps in that direction and risked it and are willing to live with a higher level of uncertainty, okay? So it's important not to judge, because once we get on this is right, this is wrong, this is somebody being a sheep, this is somebody being bold and brave, this is being a badass, this is not being a badass, we still abandon ourselves in the name of judgment. It's really just being, what do I need? What do I desire? How do I create that? And just getting so interested in your own life and not giving that up for anybody else. And when somebody else says, hey, this is what I think, this is what I'm doing, you give them a high five and be like, fuck yeah, you be you. That's awesome. And then do that for yourself too. Okay? Now, another 2 ways that the self-abandonment can kind of sneak up, or I'm going to at least stick it in here, as far as this goes, is one of the other ways that we can abandon ourselves is putting ourselves on a timeline. Like, it's arbitrary, and it's all coming from shoulds, and statistics or average lifespan or things like that. But we'll put ourselves on a timeline and say, I should have done this by this time. I do this to myself all the time. And demanding of ourselves and just being so unkind and cruel because something hasn't manifested on this timeline. When really, when we're honest about it, the reason that it hasn't is because we didn't go all in, or we've abandoned ourselves a bunch of times along the way, and so we had to like pick it back up and get started again. Okay. Also, like with the one above, as far as giving yourself up, I actually cried on Monday. I cried and said, I wish I was normal. I said that out loud. And it was funny because I just come from being somebody that does operate different, having a lot of judgment about myself, about where I am, what I've accomplished, what I think I should have done by this point, judging myself by my bank account and where it is and where it's not and what it's accomplished so far. Like all these things, I'm like, I just wish I was normal. But at the same time, if I even tried to step into that life, I would be so unhappy because I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't be operating as me. I gotta be me, and as much of a shit show as I know that to be, to actually just start trusting and not giving myself away, and actually just recommitting and being curious about what did I come to create, okay? Then, as far as self-abandonment, we might recognize it when we get annoyed with people. When people, again, like they get extra, like they are extra annoying and oh my goodness, and like why can't people do their jobs right? And this just happened also. I've done all of these this week, like in the matter of 2 days since back from vacation. Fantastic job, JOYLYN. Okay, so I know what I'm talking about, downward spirals. But it's a way of being superior, and a lot of times that's because we're actually reacting to the inferiority that we've got going on, so then we try to correct that by becoming superior. And what's often happening with that is we're not acknowledging that we've put ourselves below or in competition with a standard that doesn't match our values, or comparing ourselves to somebody who isn't us. So we shouldn't be comparing them. And then also, there are a lot of times when we're annoyed or something, it's because there's some gift or value or superpower that we have that we're not acknowledging that we have. And so almost demanding other people to be functioning at our level of consciousness or with this gift that we have, and they're not, and then getting annoyed with them instead of being like, oh, maybe I have a gift here. Because why would I ever think that I have a gift? Because I'm so low. That's the self-abandonment, subtlety, trickery, it's all a way of just kind of putting mine at the bottom. And we've gotten used to that, okay? We grew up in that, but now it's time that we see this is contributing to a lot of unfun lived experience, okay? Then, what else can contribute to a downward spiral? Not truly anything! Just kind of sitting in it. It's awesome. Not like anti-gravity floating in space. It's just sort of like being in quicksand, where the more you move, the deeper you go, but none of your movements are actually effectual because you're not actually trying to move in a specific direction, except for not where I am. And one of the ways that we do this is for those of us who are committed to growth, and actually, no, we've got some shit to deal with, okay? So we do the work and we dig in, but then we wonder why we don't feel different, is because we actually haven't been different. We're either not trusting that the changes actually happen, so we continue to test it and recreate the downward spiral to, prove to ourselves we've done it or not because we're not trusting ourselves, or we just haven't actually stepped into that next level us that actually has released, has forgiven, has decided to let go of stuff, has decided to hold their tongue, has decided to take a breath. Like we just actually haven't physically embodied an action, and so we're just like, oh, it's just not happened. And sometimes that, because we're looking to feel different and we're not feeling or seeing anything different, that can knock us back into the spiral when all it took was us to be the stuff that we've been doing. Instead of reading about it and collecting it as knowledge and being like, "Ooh, that's neat, let me tuck that in my pocket," like to actually be like, "Oh, let me play with that." Okay? So that's how we'll actually get to experience that. But when we aren't doing that at all, and kind of looking around and being like, everything's the fucking same, that we get into the reaction and we go back in the downward spiral. Fun, huh? Contributing factors. Yay. And then another reason, and this one is actually kind of neat, what can knock us into the downward spiral is actually because we've up-leveled. It's an up-level reaction. Now there's two ways this generally happens. One is the upper limits. When you've actually had such a good day, such a good experience, such a meaningful, deep connection with yourself or another human being, but it actually sort of gets the nervous system to be like, whoa, we've never had this before. This is uncertain, unsafe. I'm not familiar with this. Got to kill it. We kill it. And we go back to the downward spiral. To be like, oh, whew, okay. Oh, that was just barely made it through that happiness. Whoa, like, woo, me and my partner were getting along way too well, and that might change the world, and I'm not ready for that, so we can't have that. Oh, I was actually just really patient with myself and showed up totally different. I don't know who I am, so I better bring that back down. Okay, let me get really annoyed and irritated with somebody so I can do that, like, know who I am again. Okay, I'm the one who works on that shit. I'm not the one who actually masters that stuff. Okay, so sometimes we've actually just witnessed, seen, and experienced ourselves be something different, but it was a little bit unfamiliar, so then we have like a rubber band snap back and go back into the downward spiral so that we can know ourselves again. All right. The other thing is when we've actually done the work, you're actually then choosing and being this difference that you've been curious about and working to embrace and embody. When you actually start doing that, the feeling of it will go away because the separation from it is going away. Like at first, and this will kind of dovetail into what I'm going to. When we get curious about what is self-love really? What does self-love look like? What is loving? We have these ideas of what it looks like. And so then we can kind of notice when we're doing it, being it, and when we're not. But when we do it enough and it actually starts to become more of our normal, we don't feel it and as much anymore because we're actually being it. It's not separate. It's not a concept anymore. It's actually just our way of being. And if we're not aware that this can happen, and it does happen, and it's a natural part of the process, we can kick ourselves back into the downward spiral trying to kind of recreate the feeling. I need to know if and when I'm loving myself. So I have to not love myself so I can know if I'm loving myself. And we go into the downward spiral because the downward spiral is all about not loving yourself. You just give yourself up. So it's good to know about up-level reactions, the upper limits, and the being something new because it's so easy to misinterpret and then think that something's wrong, something's lost, something's missing, or something's just off. When it's actually what you've actually been working to change, it's there. You're having it. Now you just have to breathe and recalibrate your nervous system into being like, this is the new normal, okay? And because it's here, I can have it again. Because it, at first it's going to be intermittent, like staticky or, like when, like sparks, before it becomes a stream, an arc, like that's what's happening. So having grace with that, all right? Okay, now we're getting into the meat. How do you get out of this shit? And out of it sustainably? Because, yeah, you're going to want to do it. Here's how you do it sustainably. You're going to do it, and then do it again, and then again, and again, and again, until you actually start every single time you're willing to get out of this downward spiral. You'll notice you're not dropping as far into it before you're pulling yourself out. To where then, before you're even all the way in, you're going to be like, wait, I just said something really, I'm not even liking myself. I'm not even lit up with my life. I think I might be doing that thing. Hey, did I just have a really good day yesterday? Ooh, I totally did. I remember this or that. I was flying high. So, I'm not going to kick myself into this downward spiral again. I'm just not going to do it. Looks like the internet. Okay, internet's back. What you're going to do is these steps. And here is the number one thing to get you out of the downward spiral. And then I'm going to, make it fun. You ask this question. What would unconditional love do? Simple, right? Except that most of us don't really know unconditional love. But let me tell you, unconditional love would not get caught up in bullshit. They wouldn't overreact to their environmental circumstances. They wouldn't believe all their thoughts. They wouldn't abandon themselves. They wouldn't just not choose anything and sit in a shit pit. And they'd actually love and welcome the up level that they've been asking for. Okay, that's what love would do. Okay, so but what would unconditional love do when I'm already in this? I know that I've lost some connection to myself and some love. So what would unconditional love do? And how the fuck would I know? Because none of my primary caregivers actually showed that to me. And still, when I look out in the universe, I only see maybe 1 or 2 people who can do that sometimes. All right. So I've put it together as this. This is what unconditional love would do. Okay, you ready? Ready to go back to grade school? Okay, when you are in, when you're on fire, okay, and you're mayday, you're going down in a tailspin, you stop, drop, and roll. Okay, that's what unconditional love would do. It's stop, drop, and roll. You stop fighting it. Like I said, it's like quicksand. The more you fight it, the deeper you sink into it. You stop fighting it because what you resist persists. The more in reaction to this, if I've got to make this stop, this has to go away, the greater separation you have, and every action has an equal and opposite reaction, so it's gonna actually enlarge the whole problem. So stop. Stop fighting it. You're there. You're in it, okay? No, stop. Stop trying to figure it out, because when you try to figure it out, you actually put all your focus on the problem. And then you're doing that mental head game of coming up with trying to intellectually, academically rearrange things, analyze things, but still the entirety of your synapses and your reticular activating system and all your energy, like where your attention goes, your energy flows, is on the problem. It's on the downward spiral. So you're actually, again, making it bigger. And then stop fucking with it. Like, how many things, art projects, scabs, I pick at scabs, I do, I can't help it. I'm just like, but stop fucking with it. Like, a lot of things are actually in process and healing. If we just stopped reacting to it and stopped fucking with it and being so entertained by it, it would actually pass sooner. Like, stop rallying and getting all this emotional support from yourself, from other people. It's wasting time and repeating the pattern. So stop. Now, we know the subconscious does not just stop. So what do you do next? You drop. You drop it like a hot potato, okay? This crap is boring. You've done it before. A bunch. JOYLYN, it's not so cool anymore. It's like what the kids did in high school, but you're not in high school anymore, so cut it out. Now, drop it like a hot potato. That's just fun. If you need to be gentler, you can set it down. Whatever, just pragmatic and know, and I know that, like, how do I let this go? Release is actually easy. Release is simple. It's just a choice. You just let it go. Now, if you want to drop kick it and throw it across, like, that's actually reaction to it. And it tends to boomerang and come back. You actually just drop it. You actually just set it down. You just stop poking at it. You just stop being so fixated on it. It's that simple. But when I'm talking about drop it, I mean all of it, including the peripheral stuff, like all the patterns, all the coping, all the compensating, all the reactivity to it, all the beating yourself up, all the, here's one that just got me, the fear of being a hypocrite. If I just let this go and I stop giving a fuck, like, then what did I do with the last day and a half? That makes me look foolish, and I'm not a stupid person, or I'm afraid I am a stupid person, so I don't want to look stupid, so let me keep going over this so I can prove it was really necessary to be this caught up in it. Let it all go. Be willing to be foolish, hypocritical, reckless, whatever, lazy, like whatever word that you have that you think that if I let this go, that's what I'll be willing to be it, okay? Let go of all of it, because only the ego gets embarrassed, and it's this identity that's built around this that's keeping us here, okay? Be willing to just drop it, okay? Now, the subconscious does like ritual and ceremony, but again, the more planning you put into the ceremony, the more emphasis you put on the nobility of the struggle. So if you do want to create a pattern break and signal to your self-conscious, I'm fucking done with this, make it simple so that the release can be what's important. And that can be as easy as a conscious breath, going out into the sunshine and looking up and saying, thank you, I'm done. Sprinkling water over your head and baptizing yourself. Like, go through a doorway, close a door, tear up a piece of paper, but make it simple, immediately accessible so that you don't have to create a planning committee around this, okay? Because the point is to drop it. But you do need the subconscious to work for you, and if that's something that you think might help, do it, make it simple, okay? But drop it. Then roll with it, okay? Because you got to stop, drop, and roll, because otherwise it wouldn't be a fire drill, okay? And it wouldn't be fun. I heard my mom talking about this because there's a thing, I just can't catch up. Don't try to catch up, okay? When I talk about coaching trail running, you let the route recover you. You don't stop on an uphill because that makes the rest of the uphill harder, okay? And no hill lasts forever, even though it feels like it. Okay, the route will change. The scenery will change. The circumstances will change. Let the route recover you. This is not where you go into control mode and I've got to catch up. Okay, you just sort of roll with it. You're going to like doing lived parkour, okay? Like, shit, I'm in a downward spiral. I got to drop this and let me roll. This is where you can actually come out ahead of it. Where you actually just roll, the injuries are less, you're using the natural momentum of the whole thing. Trusting, nothing will last forever, okay? That's the roll, all right? And giving yourself some grace in this process, because the whole reason it's happening is you're just learning to work with your humanity and getting out of old habits. So some of the reason you might have been in this again is because you were up-leveling and you just misinterpreted. You didn't know that's what was happening. It was unfamiliar. Your nervous system was still fighting it a little bit. This is actually just one of the reps it takes. Stop beating yourself and judging yourself, okay? So you also then, with this, not trying to catch up, you also don't have to beat yourself up. You don't have to over-apologize or over-explain. Like, there just doesn't have to be anything ceremonious. You just keep going with it, okay? Then, I added to the stop, drop, and roll. You got to stand up. Like, rolling down a hill is fun, but you can't do it forever. Nothing lasts forever. The hill ends. Okay, so get up and allow yourself to stabilize and get to stillness so that you're not walking around like a crazy, like, drunk person, okay? You gotta let the spins, like, kind of subside. You get to stillness. You reorient. You take a look at your surroundings. And with that, when you reorient yourself, here's what you're going to do, because the immediate next action is to go forward. But when you're taking a look at your perspective, I made it. Here's another evidence. This didn't get me. I made it. I came through. Okay, let me celebrate. It's a very counterintuitive response to celebrate and acknowledge the good out of this. I'm here. Instead of beating yourself up and over-explaining. Okay, and then don't immediately go into analyzing. Because that's, again, a form of reaction and resistance. I got to make sure this never happens again. Let me find out exactly what I did. And where did I go wrong? And blah, blah, blah. Too soon. Too soon. The answers, the information is not going to be available until you move a little bit farther forward and have some space and distance to actually get a better perspective. Okay? So now it's just the time to get to stillness, reorient yourself, recognize you're alive. Thank God for this life and this magical meat suit that I've got. Thank you for another repeated experiment so I can actually now acknowledge it's boring and I don't have to do it again. I really don't. And then, what's the other one? Here, it's in here. When you've got your future forward focus in place, you reprioritize. Okay, so instead of going to reaction, you go into, okay, here I am, I made it. And here's where I'm going next, okay? And another thing that I wanted to say, like, it might be counterintuitive to be like, I fucking made it, but isn't that the funny shit? Like when you go and you watch Jackass and they like roll a golf cart and just like it goes up in flames, but they get out and they're like, I fucking did that, you know? Or like nailed it. When they make the freaking ugliest cake where the person's eyes are like drooping and it's like melting off their face because their timing was so bad with baking, but they're like, nailed it. Like, it's freaking hilarious. So make it funny. You just did it. My internet keeps going in and out, so hopefully you're going to get all this. And I'm coming to time and trying to wrap it up. So the downward spiral, you already know what I'm talking about. Getting knocked off balance, either emotionally, physically, stagnating because you're just actually not choosing and being something else, or actually because it's an up-leveling reaction. But how you get out of it is to ask, what would unconditional love do? And if you have no clue, just be like, okay, stop, drop, and roll. It's just like a fire drill. This is how I'm going to get alive. I'm just going to stop reacting, figuring it out, fucking with it, being entertained by it, and curious about it. Okay, I'm going to drop it all, let it all wash out, all the fears, all the worries, all the who am I going to be? It's going to be embarrassing. I don't want to admit to, like, all that. You just let it wash out and then you roll with it like you're a parkour master and stop. You don't have to try to catch up, apologize, explain yourself, but just kind of go with it until you can actually get to a point of stillness where the spins stop, and then you take a breath, you dust yourself off, you reorient and be like, fucking got this. I made it. Look at me. I was in there, but it didn't take me down because I'm standing up now, okay? And then be like, yeah, what were my priorities? Where am I going from now? It was being badass, audacious, calm, happy, playful, you know, whatever your priorities are that you've set, because we talk about that all the time with the Future Forward Focus. It's what every happiness clinic program is based on. All right, and then you walk forward. I want to get this like, I don't know why I think that's so funny. You move forward, and everything you need is going to be provided for you. You don't have to look back and dig and analyze. You don't have to be afraid of it happening again. You start to learn to trust yourself as an intelligent person who can acknowledge and integrate this experience so that if you have anything similar, you know it's not the exact same, and you actually are going to recognize it and get out of it sooner. And every time you do that, you're building the skills that it takes to actually just kind of be on top and have a new way of being, to where this isn't your exercise of falling in a hole and getting out and falling in a hole and getting out. Like, it's just not that fun anymore. You're actually interested in moving up. This is how it's done. What would unconditional love do? Even though you might actually feel disappointed, irritated with yourself for getting back there, even though where you'd like to be and what you'd like to experience seems so far away, what unconditional love does is says, I'm going to start from here. I'm going to take the next step. I'm going to be here with me. I'm going to change my point of view. I'm going to be willing to be wrong. I'm going to be willing to be all the things I'm afraid somebody else is going to call me. I'm going to be willing to be weird. I'm going to be willing to be one who knows me as something other than somebody who struggles with this. Because that's what love would do. Love lifts us up, and she is there every single itty bitty baby step of the way. She's never judging about how big or little the steps are. Just says, hey, and as soon as you step in a forward direction, okay? That is how to get out of a downward spiral. If you would like some additional support and help, check out the Happiness Clinic. All of the programs are based on the Future Forward Focus so that you're going to know your priorities. Now, if it's something that's downward spiral, something you've been working on for a while, the 90-day relationship remodel is an excellent choice because it's all about how to get out of self-abandoning, which is the number one contributing cause to getting in the downward spiral in the first place. All right. So we're going to remodel the relationship you have with yourself so that self-abandonment isn't part of that dynamic anymore. All right. So check it out. IHappenToThings.com/services. And And I'm going to leave it there because I'm already like 9 minutes over time. But thank you so much for joining me. I love talking about this. I love you. And I am wishing and hoping that this lands and empowers your heart, your self-love. And I can't wait to have a conversation like this again next week. Until then, I'm loving you and you love yourself. And I'll see you next week. Mwah.